Welcome to Butterflies of Wisdom, everyone. Today with me, well, by the time you hear this, it will be Monday, June 5th. My God, where has 2017 gone? And I have Bryan with me. Bryan is an author, and he wants to talk about his book. So basically, how this is going to work is I am going to obviously introduce Bryan and then talk about his book and then ask him the somewhat baseline question I ask everyone. And then he's going to ask me a couple questions, and then we'll see how that goes. So without further ado, I'm going to let Bryan take it away.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming on. And my first question is, please explain to my fans and myself more of what you do and why you wrote the book.
Yeah. So the book is a way for me to share something I've been using, a philosophy that I've been using myself. It's something I developed through my own life and that I've then been using with people that I coach and mentor to help them change their lives. And the philosophy, I call it Do a Day, which is what the book is called. It's essentially a way to look at things that we go through, things we want to achieve, free from what we might have done in the past. So mistakes we've made before, or choices we wish that we hadn't made before, or things we've had to go through before that we're not going through in this moment. And also free from all of the burdens of everything that's yet to come. And that could be the fear of some ramifications, so the fear of getting in trouble or, getting yelled at or maybe getting a speeding ticket or arrested or losing a job, or the fear of all we still have to do. So the book teaches that philosophy through my own life story. And one of the key things that I share about is I was an obese kid, and I talk about how I had to lose about 100 pounds. And that seems to be a story that resonates for a lot of people, not just because many of us have some weight to lose, but because the idea of losing 100 pounds is, that's huge. And if you were to start on that journey and, you're working really hard and you're making all these great food choices and you step on the scale and maybe it's only down 1 pound. And, you look at that as like, wow, I'm doing all this work. I'm really putting in all this effort and I'm barely making any progress. And I still have 99 pounds to go. It's just so much and it's overbearing and scary. And it just makes you want to quit. And so the philosophy is a way to free yourself from all that's come before that you may be judging yourself for, but also all of that weight and fear and pain that you may be anticipating ahead, because you don't have to deal with any of that right now. Today, you can make a series of choices and take a series of actions that really just contribute to your betterment overall without having to worry about the before or the after.
It's interesting that you say that because I admitted something to someone yesterday, which is going to become public on Tuesday, and why I'm so afraid of going back to school. That story will become public on Tuesday. Why I was definitely afraid. I shouldn't say I am now because I just released it. But you're right in your philosophy in saying, let's focus on the now and let's not focus on the past and the present. And so how has that affected people's lives that you have worked with?
Yeah, so a lot of people, that back to school story that you just, you gave us a snippet of, and I'm excited to hear the rest of it. That's actually one I've spoken to people about directly that I've worked with, where for years, they've been stuck in something in their career that they're not happy about, and they know the unlock for them would come from taking a leap and going back to school. And immediately they think of all of the things that they don't want to do for that long stretch of time going back to school. Maybe they struggled in school, in high school or college, and they see themselves in that same light. So they're like, but, I wasn't good at math. There's a bit of the before, right? And I'd have to do math in this new, this back to school situation I'm going into. So that's going to be really hard. And all of the math I have to do and the tests that I'm not going to want to take and all the, and they start looking at like years and years of homework assignments and exams. And I don't mean to scare you by bringing all this up, but it's like, hang on a second. You're not taking that exam right now, and you're not doing that math homework right now. All you have to do is recognize, I need to do this for me, and everything that I want to achieve, I need this to unlock that. And so all of these future pains end up actually not being relevant in the today. And your judgment of yourself is, using that math example, I'm not good at math because I struggled in high school or college with it. Well, you're not the same person. And, when you were doing those things then, they were probably mandatory classes that maybe didn't speak to your interests or your abilities. And if you're choosing to go back to school, you're probably doing it for specific subject matter or themes that are really of interest to you. So you may find that all of these classes that you've labeled yourself not good at, actually you're quite good at them when they're fully aligned to your interests. So let go of that past judgment and don't fear all the things you aren't doing yet, and just make the decision today. I mean, don't forget, I talked about the example of when I trained for and ran a marathon, and, again, as an obese kid, the notion of that was just like, I didn't even want to watch people run marathons. It made no sense to me. I didn't like it, and here I was going for one. When I started my marathon training, the idea of being able to run 26.2 miles, I literally couldn't do that. My body would not be able to do it. But that was irrelevant because I wasn't running 26.2 miles when I started my training. And through the training, bit by bit, you build up your abilities. Well, school is no different. Bit by bit, the more you study, the more you learn, the more you understand, the more you practice. And actually those things that seemed impossible, suddenly you've learned how to do it. I mean, look at learning a language, right? If you've never spoken a language before, you don't know how to speak it. But through the study, you eventually build up that ability. So the idea that, like, if you don't speak Japanese, if someone said, we're going to go to Tokyo in 2 years, well, that could sound impossible. I can't get around in Tokyo. Well, okay, but if you're about to start learning Japanese, you might just be able to in 2 years. So you don't need to worry about whether you can or can't today, because that's not relevant.
Exactly. And going back to school may place you in a better position in your job, or it may place you in a totally different career. For me, it's going to place me in a totally different career than I am now. So, Bryan, what is your favorite podcast if you have one?
Well, if I were pushed to it, I should probably say yours, right? But assuming
no, you
yours
don't
is off the
necessarily
table,
have to say mine.
Oh, I will say, I mean, I messaged you about this. I actually found a lot of inspiration in yours and the advocacy that you're putting out there for a group that I don't think gets very much focus. And it's interesting to hear some of your guests when you question about their consideration for people with disabilities or people who, may not fit the mold of what they consider as, capable or able or whatever biases they may have. The number of people are sort of like, you know what, I never thought about it until you asked me that question. So while I'm not going to answer yours, just present company excluded, I will at least offer some, commend you for putting a question on people's minds that isn't and should be. So I will say that. There is a particular podcast that has helped me transform my life because it brings a lot of inspirational, motivational people to my world that I wouldn't necessarily know of otherwise. And it's a guy named Rich Roll, and everyone thinks I'm saying Rick Roll, like, the internet meme, but his name is Rich Roll, like Richard Roll. He was a NCAA swimmer at Stanford growing up, and became an alcoholic, also became a lawyer, and he became this overweight, unhappy, no longer alcoholic because he went to rehab, but just sort of miserable, around 40-year-old guy, and had trouble walking up the stairs the night before his 40th birthday because he got winded. And the next morning, he changed everything. Yeah, so he's been named he was named the fittest man in the world, I think, in 2011. He's now one of the 25 fittest men in the world, and he's 50. He runs these ultra endurance events, or not runs them, he does them. He's a triathlete, so he does swimming and biking and running. He does everything. But he has this incredible podcast called the Rich Roll Podcast, where he just brings, the thought leaders, the change makers, just people who are doing things on the forefront of making life very different and very much better. So I've taken a ton of inspiration from him. And, that's one I find myself suggesting to people on a regular basis, either the whole thing or particular episodes that may resonate with something going on in their life.
You're going to have to send me that link offline, because
Definitely.
Now I'm hooked to you guys, because I don't know if you know this, but I am an ex-triathlete myself. I was lucky enough to compete in the Kona Ironman. Unfortunately, we did not win. We did not finish the Kona Ironman, but I'm happy enough that I am here to say that I accomplished a huge feat for a disabled woman. So that's my little Ironman story there. So I pretty much know. Yes?
You accomplished a huge feat for a human being, full stop.
Yeah.
Because the
yes.
overwhelming majority of people don't come close to doing what you did, whether there's a disability in the picture or not. So good for you. I haven't done it. I aspire to, so now I can aspire to be more like you.
Yeah. I did it with a teammate, you guys, so I didn't do it all alone, but there have been some wonderful organizations out there to help the disabled compete in triathlons and marathons, quite frankly. So when you mentioned Rick Ball being a triathlete, that's what keeps my interest right there, because I'm a triathlete, and God knows it's taken a lot of training and a lot of commitment when you decide to do a triathlon or marathon. So, what has been your biggest entrepreneurial success and your biggest entrepreneurial pitfall, if you have one?
Ooh, that's really interesting. So I don't think I get to qualify myself as an entrepreneur, but when I stop and think about it, what am I doing with this book and everything I'm trying to do about that and around that? And that's entrepreneurial. I am involved in a startup. I'm on the advisory board of a safety technology company. And for a few months, I came off the advisory board and was working there full-time before I took my current full-time job. And I was just talking to someone about it earlier today. While obviously I hope the business is very successful, the reality is whether we make it or not, the idea needs to make it, because people are dying and getting very seriously injured and permanently disabled that do not need to have that happen to them, and no one's doing anything about it except for us. And so that's something I'm really passionate about, and it's a safety technology company that's bringing a lot of technology and software and sensors to the hard hat space, which is a space that has not had any innovation since 1965. And I work in insurance full time, and so I've been around workers' comp insurance, and I see what happens to people in these high risk job environments where people fall and get crushed and lose limbs, and just poisoned by gas, just terrible, terrible things. And you'd be shocked at how many of them could be avoided. And you'd be shocked of those that can't be avoided, because you can't stop everything, how many of them could be dramatically minimized to the point that people's quality of life isn't materially impacted. And I think we have the means to change that.
And then if I can jump in here, once you get in the disabled system, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to deal with. So,
and the disabled system within workers' comp, which is even worse, because you've got workers' compensation insurers that are calling the shots on your life, and it's about minimizing costs. So let's stop any of that from happening. So that's something I'm really, really proud of. It is moving forward. We're in the pilot stages. So it's not my entrepreneurial venture, but it's very entrepreneurial, and I'm a part of it. So that's one thing. And the other is this book is, I took a big leap. I have a very intense and busy job, and the downside is I spend a lot of time on planes. The upside is I spend a lot of time on planes, which means I have time to write my thoughts out. And I've had the pleasure and benefit of being able to help other people through coaching work with my philosophy that I developed. And the thing that's gotten me is I just don't have enough time to help enough people. And even if I had 24 hours a day, I would probably still feel that way. And that's why I turned to writing this book is I really don't care about whether it's a commercial success or not. I care about whether it changes lives. And I believe that, commercial success will follow that if it's genuine. So, everyone who's read the book that I haven't coached is another person that I'm touching that I would have no way to help otherwise. And I've gotten at least one message a day from people I've never heard of before telling me how it's helped them and what their story is and how it's resonating. That's why I did this. So, I'm not a multimillionaire because of the book. I'm not on Oprah. I'm not retiring because of this book. So in terms of commercial success of the entrepreneurial side of this, it's not there. But that's not why I did it. In terms of the reason why I did it, this has been a huge success. So you asked me earlier offline if this was going to be my first interview. This is not only not my first interview, this is my 7th interview this week. And I wish this week was an anomaly because I'm getting tired. Yeah. It's great. I mean, it's exactly what I was hoping for.
Bad idea.
The message is resonating. It's kept me very busy, but it's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yes. It's because you're very busy, but it's great. And before I let you go rest your voice, one, I want to ask, where can people find you? Two, I want to ask, what are your questions of me?
Yes. So people can find me at doadaybook.com. That's the website I've set up for the book. And I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with that same Do A Day Book. So facebook.com/doadaybook or Twitter and Instagram, it's at doadaybook. I'm posting things out regularly. I have, personally, I have another set of accounts. It's at Newbody, NEWBODI. Those happen to be bigger accounts than my Do A Day Book account. So I'd encourage people to follow me in both places. I post a lot from all of them. And it's, I'm just trying to share these things that help people and change people. And, so doadaybook.com, you can link up to everything there.
And of course, we'll have all that information in the show notes. And you guys know how to get to show notes by now. But for those of you who don't, you can flip over any podcast cover artwork in a podcasting catching app, in a podcasting listening aggregator app, and it should flip over to show notes. If the host decides to do them, I'm the one that listens to it mobilely, and it drives me nuts when other show hosts don't have show notes. So I tend to go all out in my show notes.
Good.
And so what questions do you have for me?
I did have two, but now I want to wait on the first one until after you have your announcement about school. So I'm gonna boil it down to one question, but it's a big question. But before I do that, I just want to mention, hearing that you've done a triathlon, you might be interested to know that Rich Roll he and a friend of his, Jason Patrick Lester, were the first two people to do something called Epic 5, which is 5 Ironman distance triathlons on 5 Hawaiian islands in a week or less. Jason has continued this program on. It's a really selective, you have to qualify for it. It's a very tough thing to accomplish, as you can imagine. But what's interesting is Jason only has a function in one of his arms. So, you talk about disability. This is a guy who swam, was 114, something like that, 112 point, I forget exactly. A lot.
112, I think.
112 point something miles. Every day for 0.2. Every day for 5 out of 7 days. They meant to do it in 5 days, and they had a logistical hiccup, and that's why it stretched longer into 7 days. So they redefined it instead of 5 islands, 5 days to 5 islands, 5 Ironmen, 7 days or less, a week or less. So he swam all that distance in the open Pacific Ocean. He rode for over 100 miles. 2.4 miles swimming, 112.2 on the bike. And the running, his legs are amazing. They're not just fine, they're amazing. But to think about holding yourself up on a road bike that many days in a row for over 100 miles a day, to swim in the open ocean, which is an incredibly tough thing to do with both arms, let alone one, that's a pretty inspiring person. And he was one of the first 2 in the world to do it. So I will send you his name as well. But, there's a lot of inspiration out there, whether you're disabled or not, but just goes to show you disability might not be the right word for anything, because people are very, very capable. It's all a question of what you set yourself to and what kind of challenges you want to face. And they're all relevant. It doesn't – I did a podcast with a Navy SEAL who's been blown out of his vehicle by a rocket and lay on the side of the road in the Middle East. And I'm sitting here talking about my challenges, and it's like, okay, by comparison, he wins. But it's not a comparison. Everyone's challenges are relevant to them in their context, and they're all valid. So, everyone has some form of challenge to get over, whatever it is. And we're far more capable than we probably give ourselves credit for. And that's where I salute you and what you're trying to do with this.
Well, thank you.
Should I get to my question?
Yes, you should
so
get to your question.
Yes. So I talk in my book a lot about motivation, and I can imagine there's some really powerful motivation going on for you, and I'd love to understand that, because you have achieved, well, I thought you've achieved a ton, and then I hear about even more. So you've achieved a huge amount. Again, like whether there's a disability at play or not, you've done more than the vast majority of humans will ever do in their life. And I want to know what makes you tick. So why do you do all that you've achieved, and why do you keep pushing?
Because I grew up as if I had no disability. 2, I want to do this for those who can't speak, and for those who can't function. I want to be a voice for those who can't speak. I'm actually going back to school to get my fashion journalism degree in the fall, and so you guys know by now, if you go to Amazon and buy my books, one of my books, I said books, not books, and that will go towards my college funding, because now with the Pell Grants and now with all these grants and all these student loans, I'm stuck in the middle of student loan land. But I am also curious about buying my textbooks. I mean, they cover the education tuition, but they don't cover the textbooks necessarily. So that's why I'm doing a campaign right now, you guys, for books for books, which means translated. Go buy my books on Amazon, and then I'll buy my textbooks based off of that. And so I'm trying to become a New York Times bestselling author with cerebral palsy, so that makes me tickets well, Bryan. And then I'm also trying to finish a second book to my accompaniment, I Come a Win. I need $3,500 to finish that book, and because of ghostwriting and because of editing costs. But writing, podcasting, and doing all the advocacy work I do for several different disabilities makes me tick.
Wow. As I said, I thought you were inspiring And then the more I hear, even just in this conversation, let alone the others I've listened to, there's a lot more to you. So I will raise my hand and say, I bought your book, and I hope other people have as well. And it's not just to support you. I happen to think I'm probably going to take a ton from it, but I like what you're going for, so I'm happy to support you as well. But selfishly, I think I'm just going to get a lot out of your book, so I'm excited for it anyway.
Thank you. Thank you. And when you finish reading, please leave a review. Please text me that review so I know you finished reading it. And you guys, I will see you back here later today. You guys won't hear these interviews until Monday, but let's keep walking June and let's keep changing the world. And I thank Bryan for coming on my podcast. This podcast has been sponsored by Go Kidda, K-I-T-T-E, or Kidda. They compose a tweet, or you can compose a tweet. But the cool thing about Kidda is they put the trendy hashtag with it so you guys don't get lost in the heat. And then we can just keep continuing the work that Bryan and I are doing. I support Bryan, who supports me, and it's perfectly fine. So I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode. Thanks to you guys.
Thanks, Wynn.